In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be discussing the dramatic win in the Coppa Italia against Milan. We'll be reviewing the emphatic win against Benevento. We'll be previewing the Coppa Italia Derby d'Italia against Juve, as well as the match against Fiorentina, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima Ruzzari, wishing you welcome to a very happy episode because Inter are through to the semi-finals of the Coppa Italia, but more importantly, they are after having beaten Milan in a classic Derby della Madonnina match where they won. And we're going to get to all of that because there's so much to talk about. I feel you can do an entire season on that game alone. But let me introduce my panelists, starting with the SempreInter.com preview writer, Mr. Positivity himself, Mr. Mystic Mo Nassar.
Locked and loaded and ready for this episode. Looking forward to it, boys.
Let's do it. And we're also joined by the SempreInter.com chief news editor, Mr. William Beckman.
Hello, Nima. Hello, everyone. I've been spending the last few days learning the Danish national anthem off by heart after the 97th minute of Tuesday's derby. So I feel like maybe I can perform it at the end of the show because it's a great tune and I want to be able to sing it a lot between now and the end of the season. For sure. And we're also joined by our very good friend. He has his own podcast called the Culture Connection Podcast. He has his own show. A good friend of ours. Welcome back, Mr. Alex Donno.
I was just stuffing my face with cheese Danish, any sort of Danish pastry. I was just enjoying. And I'm so happy to be back, especially in a week off of 2 victories. Coppa Italia, Serie A. My timing is impeccable. Hey, guys.
Well, it really is. Let's get to it. I want to hear your thoughts, Alex. First of all, watching that game, what are your thoughts just on the game as a whole? After just now a few days now, you've had a few days to think about it.
I mean, that derby, and my enthusiasm going into it was, obviously I'm always going to be a little bit enthused at least for a Milan derby, but my enthusiasm was not near the maximum just because it was a Coppa Italia game. So I did, this wasn't, a Serie A derby. But then the game itself, I mean, guys, the intensity of it was a throwback to a better time, right? When the two clubs of Milano were it's been so long since both Inter and Milan have been good at the same time and competing for a Scudetto at the same time. And so you really felt a level of intensity in this match. And I know we're going to talk a lot, I'm sure, about the scuffle between Lukaku and Zlatan. And you get varying reactions to it, right? Certain people will try and say, oh, this is a disgrace. You never want to see this in sport. You never want to see it in football. Without picking apart the specific things that were being said, just overall, I love seeing stuff like that, guys. I mean, being someone who grew up, watching calcio and even, watching NBA basketball back in the 90s, seeing, back when superstar players weren't all chummy and they weren't all friends and liking each other's Instagram posts 20, 30 years ago, you used to get intensity in big games on a regular basis. And, of course, there's a history between Lukaku and Zlatan as former teammates at Manchester United. They used to have the same agent. They know each other very, very well. And so I just really enjoyed both sides getting a little chippy, getting a little heated. The game itself was very good and very competitive. And when Lukaku got that penalty kick, it was Barella who earned the penalty, Lukaku taking the PK in the second half. I thought he was going to smash that ball right through the back of the net. He was pretending that the ball was Zlatan's head, the enthusiasm he took that with. And what can I say about Christian Eriksen? Eriksen gets his opportunity. And you just knew when he was lining up to take that free kick in the 97th minute, and they had so much added time because of a referee having to be replaced due to a muscular injury. So you're talking about being in the 90s. This game had everything. In the 97th minute, something about where he was lining up, because you knew that was perfect sweet spot for vintage Eriksen. Nima, I just knew that was going in. Like in the back of my head, I said, this is going to be Eriksen's moment. And it really wasn't shocking to me what he did there.
No, for sure. I mean, I want to pick up on that point you made about from years gone by, because that's how it felt for me. I mean, the last 10 years, roughly speaking, haven't been that great for neither of these two clubs, and the derby lost a little bit of its intensity and quality and passion for sure. And then, especially when Gattuso took over at Milan, he did decent results there, but the passion in the derby was dead, because this derby was always about winning for both teams, and he just parked the bus against Inter all the time. And then you have a turnaround when Pioli takes over, and the 4-2 win when Inter come from 2-0 down. That's the turning point where we're going back to the derby of old. And then you have this game, which had everything, and it was the derbies I grew up with. It was two teams that wanted to win. It was two teams with players that did not want to concede an inch to each other. They really wanted to win. It wasn't chummy. It wasn't lovey-dovey. It was pretty ugly at times. And if it wasn't for, if there had been a crowd, then we wouldn't even hear what they would have said to each other, and the shitstorm that ensued wouldn't have ensued. But you're absolutely right. To me, this was a derby of the of years gone by, and I absolutely love it. This is the derby that I grew up watching, and I was talking to colleagues in journalists and friends who are Milan fans who said the same thing, that regardless of the result, this was a Milan derby. This was a real Milan derby for the ages. It had everything, both on and off the pitch and on the sidelines. And the referee getting injured was just of course the referee got injured. So no, it was a great game for sure. But I mean, if we're talking more about the episodes, as the Italians call them, we can't get away from this from the Ibrahimovic Lukaku thing, which I'm keen to hear what you all think on this. I'm going to start with you, Mo. What's your take on this? On what happened?
What's my take on I'll clarify. First of all, it is my personal opinion, with all due respect to everyone, that I do not think there's anything racist about anything that went down. I loved the argument. I loved the spat. It was really, like Alex was saying, it was a throwback to the old ages when people got in each other's faces. I also think that Ibrahimovic is a real prick, and I know that pisses you off a bit because you.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I like it.
That douchey ponytail at the age of 20. He kind of reminds me of Conor McGregor. Not this last fight, because he was super respectful, but like he's almost like a caricature of himself now. Like he expects people to really tone it down as they grow older, become a bit wiser, a little more, But the guy, like 1 week, he tells Dufan Zapata, "I've scored more goals than you've played games." Next week, he's winding Lukaku up. But you just wound up the wrong guy, Lukaku's not. He just you don't screw around with Lukaku. He doesn't mess around. So I really loved it. I really loved it, and like Alex said, it really shone the spotlight on the two Milan teams. It really, like, you listen to any podcast this week, any world football podcast, and they're talking about the derby this week. And this is not something that has happened in a very, very long time. And in particular, because it was Zlatan and Lukaku, the two, marquee players on both sides. Now, again, do I think there's anything beyond the spat that needs to be discussed? No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody should be disciplined beyond the yellow cards that have been dished out, or any of that. It is what it is. Two grown men getting in each other's faces. So that's where I'll stop the discussion.
I agree 100% with everything you just said. I think it's ridiculous. I think we have to.
Zlatan getting sent off in the second half.
Yeah.
Up another yellow was just so beautiful, and like Kolarov's wry smile, everything about that was so nice. So yeah. So just like Zlatan's a prick, but the argument was lovely and fun. And that's it. That's all I have to say about that. Let's not bring racism into this.
It wasn't racist, and what he's referring to is quite clearly when there's always an Iranian in every good story. Everton's owner Farhad Moshiri, when he wanted to sign Lukaku, claimed that Lukaku had been on a spiritual trip in Africa, and that a voodoo priest had told him not to sign for Everton. That's where that comes from. So he was just mocking him because of that. It had nothing to do with racism. And I loved that they were in each other's faces. And I don't think anyone can take it seriously what they said to each other. It was childish. It was a bit embarrassing, but it was hilariously funny. And trash talk is a part of sports. I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to this school of thought. I said the same thing back in 2006 when Materazzi trash talked Zidane to losing his mind. Totally okay with trash talk, and the line goes at racism and stuff like that. But that wasn't what happened. They were just two grown men insulting each other because they were getting in each other's faces. And I think it's also really important to remember that Lukaku didn't say anything. He wasn't offended about something racist. He was offended about Zlatan talking about his mother. And I think that's an important point in all of this. As for Zlatan being a prick, yes, he is an asshole, but he's a very delightful asshole, and I love that he's an asshole. You need to have assholes. Materazzi was our asshole. The way he used to harass Andrei Shevchenko for his entire career. So it's part of the game. It's part and parcel of the game, and I absolutely love it, exactly like you and Alex have alluded to. So for me, it's just funny. I think it's good. It's good for the derby, like you said, and everyone's talking about it. These are characters. Zlatan's has been, at least if you want to be not generous to him, he has been a world-class player for the past 20 years. I'd argue he still is, especially in the air. Lukaku is as well. You have two big-name players. They're going at each other. Two alpha males getting it on. It's hilarious. I want to hear what you think, Will, about this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't offended personally by anything that went on. I think from a disciplinary standpoint, I do think the referee probably should have sent them off because they did absolutely nothing to stop their protest after the yellow card was brought out, because the yellow card was not for the insults, it was for the sort of fisticuffs. But the fact that it then continued afterwards during the game and then after the halftime whistle means that's certainly the view of referees that I've read anyway, that there was no way that either of them should have come back out for the second half. Personally, I don't feel like it was too much. I mean, I wasn't that comfortable initially with Ibra's voodoo comment, because I know that Lukaku, as far as we're aware, he's not said anything, was offended by that. There have been some others that a couple that I've spoken to that didn't think a lot of that comment, and that's something that I can't really comment on, having not been in that position. But personally, it was aggro is good. I think I prefer it when it's kind of pantomime, sort of playful aggro, rather than bringing up people's mothers and talking about slightly more personal issues. So I wouldn't want to see it every week, if I'm completely honest. I might be different in that regard, but I mean, fundamentally, I don't really care. I don't really get off on this kind of entertainment stuff, and I've actually found it quite boring, the amount of media time that it's got in the last few days. I'd rather talk about the game, but that's just me being,
Well, fair enough. Alex, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later with the Moji, but it is, I mean, to Will's point, it is a little unfortunate in one aspect, especially, that 95% of the narrative coming out of that match was about the scuffle, especially the voodoo comment, because I think maybe it takes a little bit away from a classic derby from start to finish, with the actual football being played, in addition to the little I'm not going to use the word melee, I guess, but the situation that happened on the pitch. It was a fantastic game, and also it takes a little bit away from the Christian Eriksen narrative, because that was a huge moment for him. And even I thought that he followed up nicely from that in the Benevento match, where he got a chance to play from the start, and I thought was quite good in that game. And I've noticed a difference in his confidence. I mean, if you're going to look at things like body language and the amount of smiling someone's doing and the enthusiasm that they play with, it's been night and day with him over these past 2 games.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to talk about the Christian Eriksen thing, because it's quite clear to me that I thought he was really good against Fiorentina. I saw the embryo of something against Milan. I think we saw something, where this embryo could go. And then against Benevento, he was, for me, the man of the match. The cross passes he made, the vision, the registe, the regia, as the Italians call it, have been calling it in the papers today, was phenomenal. He created play from his set pieces were fantastic. His he lacked a little bit defensively, but you can, this is Benevento. They were never going to bother Inter defensively anyway. I think this is a game changer if they can continue to play him. I don't expect to play him against Atalanta or Milan or Juve. No, but if you're playing in Udinese, Sampdoria, Bologna, Christian Eriksen is definitely the guy to use, because he gives you it's another weapon in your quiver that you can use in your to hurt teams that defend deep, especially like in the Udinese game, where they basically lined up 2-3 lines of 11 players, blocking and shrinking every space. I think he absolutely showed that he has the ability and the willingness to learn and adapt to that role, both offensively and defensively. I thought he was really good against Milan as well, although he was only on for 10-15 minutes. But I thought he was good, and he was getting involved, and he's getting shots away. And I really enjoy where this is going. Mo, where are you? I mean, you were a little, if I remember correctly, you were a little bit skeptical about Eriksen in that regista role. But was that, first of all, were you, or do I remember that correctly? And if where are you on that whole thing?
No, I was skeptical because of Eriksen's lack of defensive commitment, for sure, and his especially the Fiorentina game, where I believe that he had been given a chance to really do something special, and his contribution in that game was just adequate, was mediocre. It was neither. It didn't seem to me like someone who really wanted to put their mark on the role. Threatened Brozovic for the position, etc. I think we spoke about this a few months ago, last season, I believe it was. I think, sadly, that Eriksen in the side means that Gagliardini has to play. So it's Barella, Gagliardini, and Eriksen, or Brozovic, Vidal, and Barella. I think Gagliardini, for all his faults and shortcomings, volumes and volumes. I think the fact that he's just extremely hardworking, continues to run, tries and picks up the pieces where behind Eriksen, where Eriksen might not track back as frequently as he should. And I think, like you just said, Nima, I think it's a great solution to have in those games. Your Udinese game, your Benevento, maybe Spezia, those games where you need to give teams a different look and just not go with the plan A. So I'm certainly over the moon, and I think that Eriksen coming back into the fold and a healthy Sensi are definitely going to be important contributing factors to Inter's Scudetto run. I mean, that shouldn't be undermined. What I'll say is, especially in the Benevento game, and again, this is Benevento, so we that's a caveat there, an important caveat, is that, like you said earlier, Eriksen did really perform. He really did put his mark. And whether it's because, like Conte has been saying, he's been training for that role, so he understands, he knows how to interpret the role a bit better. He was more comfortable, and clearly Eriksen is a very temperamental player who really needs to feel comfortable and assured when he's deployed. So maybe it's his familiarity with that role that made him express himself a bit more. Maybe it's just that Benevento are I mean, clearly they are a bit weaker than Fiorentina, although Fiorentina are god awful. But but maybe it was just that. Maybe it was just the fact that it was the second time in that role. But definitely, I agree 100% with you that the Eriksen that we saw against Benevento playing that regista role with that midfield module was definitely, miles and miles and miles better than anything that we'd seen from him over 90 minutes at least since his move last January.
For sure. Will, I'm keen to pick your brains on what you think about the Eriksen experiment. To me, I mean, I was very positive after the Fiorentina game, and Mo wasn't, and I think against Benevento, I think we're all in agreement that he was really good, but and against Milan, and discarding the goal. But where are you on this?
Well, I was more or less with Mo at the time after the Fiorentina game, in that while I didn't dislike Eriksen's performance, I didn't really take much from it. And as you said, this match was different, and I just wonder if, and it was different in his sort of his attitude and his almost like he felt like he belonged in the team for the first time. And I just think that moment on Tuesday, that could be the moment that changes everything, because he had not had a big moment like that in an Inter shirt. It could not have been any better. You know, you need something like just that little sort of flicker of turning on a light switch, or just that little spark under your backside to get you going. And I hope that's the case, because you could see how much it meant to him on Tuesday. You could see how much it meant to his teammates as well. Conte was really effusive in his praise after the game, saying that everyone wants good things for Eriksen. We all like him. He's not going anywhere. I hope this goal gives him energy. I hope this helps him come out of his shell. And I think it did. I think the only time I've seen Eriksen that sort of involved in a match, in terms of being a part of the way the team was functioning, the only other game I can remember that was anything like that was the Sampdoria game after lockdown, where he was playing as a number 10, and he had 45 minutes where him and Lukaku and Lautaro could have scored about 5 goals between them. But then that experiment kind of got ditched when Conte went back to his 3 central midfielders, and then Eriksen never got back in the team. So maybe also there's also the fact that 2 weeks ago against Fiorentina, because I do think there was a difference in the way that he was imposing himself on the game, compared to the Benevento game, which I thought was much better. There is a possibility that now that he knows he's staying, he's kind of screwed his head back on, because we know that 2 weeks ago he was still probably expecting to leave. There wasn't necessarily anything on the table then, but there was a lot of talk. His agent was fishing around in the Premier League. So that could be another reason, not just the Milan goal, but also the fact that he knows now that he's probably, unless something ridiculous happens in the last 24 hours of the transfer window, he knows that he's going to be staying. I thought he was great. I mean, as you said, Benevento. A lot of people were getting excited on Twitter yesterday about how Benevento had a 0.00 xG, which I think they might be the first team, certainly the first team in Italy to record 0 xG in a game. The final whistle was blown before we even had 90 minutes on the clock, so that gives you an idea of the kind of threat that they posed. They kind of never existed in the game, apart from maybe a 5-10 minute spell after we made it 1-0. But yeah, no shots on goal. So I do think that Mo made a really good point about Gagliardini. I hadn't thought about that, because if Eriksen's going to play there, the problem is not his passing range or his vision, which is one of the things you need there. It's the mobility and the defensive awareness. So having Gagliardini next to him does make a lot of sense in that regard. As you said, it's not going to work, I don't think, in a big match. I don't think he'll start a big match unless Brozovic happens to be suspended, which is possible, but I don't think Conte's going to choose that. But yeah, this is definitely something that we haven't seen, and something that I'd given up on. I didn't think that. I thought Conte had made his bed with Eriksen and was going to lie in it for however long he needed. But as you said, the important thing is he's now a resource to be used. He's now part of the rotation. Conte made 6 changes for that game, and he knows now that if he's got a big game coming up or somebody's injured, Eriksen can come in and be the person we need. Just on the free kick, by the way, 2 things that I noticed. That was Inter's first goal from a free kick since Cancelo scored in April 2018, which was 135 games ago in all competitions. So we haven't scored from a direct free kick in nearly 3 years. And also it was the latest goal ever in the Derby della Madonnina in terms of normal time, excluding extra time. The previous record, I think, was Christian Zapata's goal, which was 31 seconds earlier than Eriksen's a few years ago. And obviously the coincidence about both of those goals is that Stefano Pioli was responsible for conceding both of them. So the 97th minute is not a friend to him in this particular fixture.
Yeah, I remember that was a 2-2 lunchtime derby, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, when Icardi finally broke his Derby duck.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that. And Candreva as well. Yeah,
and
memories.
Pioli went to a back five, much like Conte did against Roma, and then
For sure.
Yeah.
And they all went
so yeah,
went
we've managed to wipe Zapata from Milan derby history, which is always good.
For sure. One thing I wanted to touch base a little bit on was also Aleksandar Kolarov, who I honestly did not like in that game. I think he showed that he's really not good enough and that he's not a good alternative to play in these big games. He was slow to react, and there was a reason why Zlatan Ibrahimovic was always on Inter's left side. Kolarov was completely gone for the goal. He needs to be tighter there, but he's too old and he's playing out of position. He wasn't good as a left central defender at Roma. He's not. He's way past it to play as a left wing, to play as a wing back or a full back. I was not I mean, they said that when we brought him, his position, his deliveries and set pieces and crossing was supposed to be good, but they were atrocious. Aside from the first cross pass he made in the first 2 minutes, other than that, he was a complete liability. I'm starting to. How many more goals does this guy have to concede, cost Inter, before Conte wakes up out of this dream he's in that Aleksandar Kolarov can do a job for him? Because it's really starting to, against Benevento, I don't care if he plays him because Benevento, but I don't like that he plays him against Milan, and this stresses me out. And I think that we're going to a game. We're headed towards a situation where he will play against Milan because Bastoni, Barella, and Brozovic are all one yellow card away from an automatic 1-game suspension. And I hope that it doesn't come in the Fiorentina game because Lazio are the ones who are after Fiorentina. And they're on an incredible form right now. They destroyed Atalanta today. They're 5 wins in a row. Unbeaten in 7. So I'm a little bit, this Kolarov thing is going to come and haunt us. I don't have a good feeling about that. Alex, are you going to talk me off the ledge here, or
no? I'm going to leave that off the ledge. I don't have anything nice to say about Kolarov. I mean, unfortunately, he should never have been signed in the first place. Unfortunately, he's in the squad, so hopefully not often, but I think there are times when he really has to play, as a left-footed, quote-unquote, center back. Bastoni can't play every single game. Unfortunately, maybe he can, but I don't want to completely run him into the ground. Kolarov, every time he's on the pitch against a halfway decent opponent, you can guarantee he's going to be responsible for at least one goal. It happened with Ibra, in that derby. And, at first, and I watched that game a couple of times. I tend to watch, the fun victories more than once because I like to relive the joy. Kolarov, to be fair, was a bit better in the second half, but he also wasn't going up against Zlatan for most of that second half because Ibra got sent off in that second half and they were going up against 10 men. So it aided him a little bit. So he was, let's say, aside from a goal given up, less of a disaster than he usually is, but that's really not saying much when you're grading on a curve. This is going to go down as maybe not the absolute worst, because there have been a few of those poor signings in the last 4 or 5 years, but this is one of the worst signings in recent memory. And I know that, of course, Kolarov wasn't expensive. You're not breaking the bank for him, but still, for a club with very important objectives, they already crashed out of Champions League. It's Scudetto or bust this season. You'd like to win Coppa Italia if you can, because I think any chance at a trophy is important. Having a guy like Kolarov at your disposal at this point in his career when he can't move, it's a liability, and that's unfortunate.
His deliveries and set pieces were supposedly why they brought him in. Yeah. I mean, against Milan, it was atrocious. It was unwatchable. It was so bad, and it's just, to me, it's like, come on, like, can we please stop now? Play him against Genoa, play him against Crotone and Spezia, but other than that, don't play him. You mentioned the Coppa Italia, and we are playing the Coppa Italia semi-final against Juve on Tuesday. What are you expecting to see? Are you expecting to see something similar to what we saw in the Serie A, or where are you on this? What do you expect? Personally, my expectation is we're going to see two teams that are very cagey, and I think Inter will go through, but I don't think Inter will go through by winning. I think Inter will go through by 0-0 draw at home, 1-1 away on aggregate. That's where I am. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's probably closer to what I believe than what I imagined the Coppa Italia, the Serie A game just a couple of weeks ago would have been. I think Juve are certainly going to be. They have much more to lose here in the sense that they need to really stamp their authority on their perceived subordinates in the table. They've been really made fools of by Inter, by Conte, Pirlo, by Conte in particular. So I think they're the ones who are going to really push the issue forward. I don't think they're going to be cagey. I think they're going to actually be quite aggressive and try and make Inter pay quickly. But I also think that, or I optimistically hope that Conte will understand. I haven't quite looked at their squad list, who's recovered, who hasn't recovered, Alexandro, Cuadrado, but we'll have analyzed and understood the implications of everything. It's just a matter of how much importance does Conte and Inter give the semi-final versus the match against Fiorentina versus the subsequent derby that comes right after. So I think in general we're a better team at the moment. Famous last words and all, but I think we're a better team in a better moment. And like you were saying, like Will was saying earlier, the fact that Eriksen is coming into the fold, the fact that Sensi, hasn't been injured for more than 2 weeks now, the fact that we actually
thank God for small favors, right?
Pinamonti is on the field. The fact that Alexis is, showing his desire after the ghost swap with Dzeko, the phantom swap with Dzeko didn't fall through. All of that, I think, puts us overall in a better place. So I think we'll go through, but I think I don't think it'll be as cagey as you make it out to be. I think Juve are going to try and force the issue, and Inter are going to beat them on the counter, outplay them in the midfield. I think.
What about you, Alex? So what are you expecting? Do you think it's going to be cagey? Do you think it's going to be more kind of similar to what Mo said is the league game was, where Juve are pushing more and Inter are waiting? Let's remember that Hakimi and Lukaku are suspended for the first leg. So what do you?
Yeah, and that was going to be my big point. I'm glad you pointed that out. Is that it's going to be difficult, and I think it's going to be cagey, primarily for that reason, that you're not going to have Lukaku or Hakimi at your disposal. So you're taking away a couple of your most potent, creative players, whether it be a goal-scoring threat like Lukaku, and Hakimi also a goal-scoring threat to his right, but also someone who can really create and facilitate. So right there, it's going to put Inter in a difficult spot. So maybe a little bit more of a defensive focus for them. And similarly to you, Nima, I'm expecting Inter to go through. I think both games are going to be relatively low scoring, maybe a 0-0 or a 1-0 victory at home, and then a draw in Torino. But yeah, I could agree that would be the similar tone. I think both of these squads are going to be somewhat cautious of keeping their squads somewhat rested for Serie A. I mean, both teams are in a Scudetto race, so I'm curious to see how it plays out.
For sure. What about you, Will? What are you expecting? And what do you hope to see versus what you expect to see?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's going to be cagey. It's the first leg of a two-legged semi-final, and it's a match against your biggest rivals. So I don't expect goals galore. I remember the first leg of that semi-final against Napoli last year was very much on those lines. Although actually, having said that, I think, if anything, I expect us to be more cagey than Juventus, because I think we're more comfortable playing that kind of protective game than Juventus are. I don't remember a single game this season where Pirlo has gone out and told Juventus to sit back and soak up pressure. That doesn't seem to be what they're going for. So I expect that we will probably play like the away team and we'll let Juventus have the ball. and we'll just have to hope that we can make something of it. But as you said, Lukaku and Hakimi are out. That's huge. So if we take a draw from this, preferably a clean sheet as well, then it's not a disaster. I would back us to sneak through in Turin. So I don't expect anything too dramatic in this first leg. I'm certainly hoping that it's slightly less dramatic than that Coppa semi-final 5 years ago when we both won a game 3-0 and then lost it on penalties. I don't want that to happen again. That was a traumatic affair in 2016 under Mancini. So, but this period in general is interesting because I think the next 3 weeks are going to define our season. I don't know about Juventus, but our next 5 games are Juventus, Fiorentina, Juventus, Lazio, Milan. Between the league and the cup. So, if on the 22nd of February, which is the day after the derby, we are at least the same gap to Milan and we're in a Coppa final, then I think we're in a very good place. Alternatively, if we go out and then we drop points against Lazio Milan, then everything's going to be looking very negative all of a sudden, and we're going to be trying to cling on to the coattails of a season that's kind of slipping away again. So I think this is I'm tense for this semi-final. I'm tense in general for this period, this month, February, because there's a huge amount at stake. I just hope that these wins against Juventus and Milan that we've had recently, 2 deserved wins, 2 wins that were absolutely not flukes, despite Milan's red card on Tuesday, have put us in the right frame of mind to approach these games with the right sort of mental approach. Because this team should be in absolutely no doubt now that even if Conte makes 2 or 3 changes here and there, we are absolutely good enough to beat any of these teams. The interesting thing about this game, though, is that, Pirlo completely got his tactics wrong in that match 2 weeks ago. Surely he's not going to do the same thing again. Surely he must have learned something. Surely Brozovic will be pressed, for instance.
That's exactly what that's exactly what I'm thinking is why I'm expecting a KG affair. I don't. If there's anything we've learned from Pirlo in his career so far is that he doesn't make the same mistake twice. He makes it once and then he learns from it. He did it against Barcelona in the Champions League and then he mopped the floor with Barcelona. He did it against, he did something. He was outclassed by Conte because he got it wrong against Inter, and then they go and win the Supercoppa and they go on a bit of a run. So I think he's found his midfield trio with Artur, Bentancur, and McKennie. I don't think the 3 of them will play this game. I expect more. I expect him to rotate a little bit more, but I'm definitely with you. I don't expect him to go out to do the suicide thing again. And I expect Inter not to be as prolific going forward without Hakimi and Lukaku, who are without a doubt Inter's 2 most.
That's 70% of our attacking thrust, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. So no. So I mean, I'm going to say I'm in a goalless draw this first leg. What about you, Will?
Goalless draw would suit me. I've actually got 1-1 though. But yeah, if I can choose a draw, then it's definitely a 0-0 because, as you said, away goals could be a thing.
What about you, Mo? What is your prediction for the first leg?
2-1.
2-1. Okay. Any goal scorers?
Lautaro. I think Lautaro will score, and you know what? Let's give Eriksen another free kick.
Nice one.
And Cristiano will get the penalty, of course. Is that what you're saying?
For sure.
Alex, what about you?
Well, if Kolarov doesn't play, I'm actually going to say clean sheet for Inter. If Kolarov does play, surely a token goal will be given up. So if he's not on the pitch, I'm going to say 1-0 for Inter with a Barella goal. Otherwise, I'll say 1-1.
For sure. Right. Then we play Fiorentina. A Fiorentina who is not Fiorentina. I don't know what to call this Fiorentina side. They are crazy. They can beat Juventus 3-0, and then they have a meltdown and have 2 players sent off against an awful Torino and lose a 1-0 and drop a 1-0 lead in the dying minutes. I honestly don't know what to make of this Fiorentina team, but what I do know is that Milenkovic and Castrovilli are suspended against Inter, which is huge. But they do have a certain Franck Ribéry there who caused Inter all sorts of problems in the return leg in the reverse fixture in the beginning of the season. But I do expect Inter to win this game comfortably. I really do, because I've watched quite a bit of Fiorentina this season, and they are not good. They are not good. And without Castrovilli and Milenkovic, of course Borja Valero will play, but I and I'm sure he'll be good because he's always good. or Santo Borja, as Antonio Conte called him. But I do expect Inter to win, and I think that the clean sheet will be ruined in this game. I think Ribery Vlahovic will get one, but I do think Inter will win. I think Inter will win pretty clearly 3-1. What are you thinking, Mo?
I think that I really hate Artemio Franchi in recent years. I think this it's a cursed stadium. I think we spoke about that last episode or before. I can't remember. So I'm just not to tempt the fates any further. I'm just going to say it's a draw, whatever draw, a 1-1 draw, 2-2 draw, whatever. But I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna. We're gonna. If we do make it with full points back from Florence, it's no small feat. You know, it really is, because these are points. When you look at the schedule, you know, you do your quick arithmetic in your mind. These are points that I haven't factored in any sort of calculations for Inter to pick up at the end of the year. So if we come back with 3 points, amazing. I just don't think we will. I think we will come back with 1 point, and that's it.
Well, I mean, given that Inter lost 3 points away against Sampdoria and then Parma at home, and I think this is where you have to make up those points. Because I'm with you. Looking at the schedule in the beginning of the season, this is not a place I expect Inter to go and win. And in fact, Inter have historically always struggled away against Fiorentina. But this Fiorentina is not good, and without Castrovilli and Milenkovic, they are very, very, very vulnerable. What about you, Alex? Where are you?
Well, this is landmark because I'm actually going to be more optimistic than Mr. Positivity. Nima, you completely stole my thunder. 3-1 is the exact score line I was going to, and I will predict. Not to steal your thunder. You already stole mine. I go back to that, and the game that was Inter's first game of the season. They played against Fiorentina, which was a wild, I think 4-3. Was the final, was an absolute wild game. It's really a different Fiorentina since that point. I mean, Chiesa was still on the squad, and he played exceptionally well against Inter. Castrovilli played really well. He scored a goal, I think, in that game, and of course, he's suspended for this one. Chiesa's not around, and in fact, when and Beppe Iacchini was the manager at that point, and when he subbed off Chiesa and Ribery, that turned out to be, in hindsight, a tactical error that helped Inter get back into that match because the two of them had been playing so well. I think this is going to be more routine for Inter. I'm assuming they're going to have a better version of their back line because, remember, Kolarov started in that game, and he was really the reason why Inter had to struggle so much because he was responsible for at least 2 of those goals by himself. So sure. I think it's going to be, relatively speaking, I think this one is going to be smoother sailing with a 3-1 victory. Maybe it'll be 2-1 until the late stages, and then Fiorentina will press and Inter will take advantage on the counter to get the 3-1. I think Lukaku probably gets a brace in this one, and then maybe I'll give Lautaro the other.
For sure. What about you, Will? Are you more cautious and don't want to jinx it, or are you more with me and Alex on this one?
I am confident because of the fact that Fiorentina are a disaster, but I do also have a lot of fear of the stadium. I associate the Artemio Franchi with pain, so I don't think this is going to be comfortable. It never is. We've been in a position to win these matches comfortably before, and we didn't do it. So the 4 of the last 5 league games we've had there, we've conceded a goal in stoppage time. And the one game where we didn't concede in stoppage time was that 5-4 defeat under Pioli, where we were already 5-2 down by the last 10 minutes. So this is not a happy time. The last time that we beat Fiorentina in the league, we had the likes of Jonathan, Guarin and Kuzmanovic starting with Rolando, Taider coming on in the second half. So,
memories.
It was Mazzarri's year. So that's 7 seasons ago that's how long it's been since we won this game. But I agree. I mean, the fact that the fans aren't there is probably going to help us. That kind of dilutes the Franchi factor a bit. Castrovilli and Milenkovic are huge. If you're just looking at it as a football match between 2 sets of 11 players, there's no justification for us not winning this game. Ribery, I hope that he's in one of his off days because while he's fantastic when he's on it, there are also days where he does look like a 37 or 38-year-old. In fact, the game against Torino on Friday was one of them until he actually scored. So, he can blow hot and cold. Callejon is also getting on. So Fiorentina, they're relying a lot on those two being sort of in the game and on the ball. So let's hope they have an off day. Vlahovic will be a pain. He scored that wonderful goal in this match last season that cost us 2 points. So, but I do think this will be a win. I think Ribery will score, and I've got Lukaku and Brozovic for a 2-1 win, and I hope that is the case.
I hope so as well. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the negativity, which will be presented by Mr. Alex Donno.
Well, guys, in this day and age, we see far too many trials and convictions on social media, newspapers, cancel culture. So I'm going to throw out the Moji to many folks out there who just have jumped to the conclusion that Zlatan Ibrahimovic is now a racist, because I saw that happening far too often, and I think there was really a failure of context, and I think a lot of headline creators and clickbait artists designed it this way. When you see the voodoo comments on print, I can certainly understand that without the context and without the backstory, why people would go where they did with a comment being made to Lukaku about doing his voodoo. I can understand why people took it the wrong way. I just think that sometimes there's too much of a failure in nuances. I certainly, and we discussed this earlier, I have, even though Zlatan is playing for the other team, and I was happy he got sent off in the second half, and I'm happy Inter won the game. I was never one to jump on the bandwagon of the witch hunt of accusing Zlatan to be a racist. In no way do I think that is the context he intended those comments to be in, and I think people made way too much of that banter. So hopefully the true story behind it and the backstory is getting to enough ears that people understand what really happened in that scuffle.
Amen. For sure. Let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yes, I think Neil will be a fan of this because it involves Eusebio Di Francesco. I'm going to give the Frog of the Week to Tommaso Giulini, the Cagliari owner. It's not quite as blatantly frog as some others, but I think it is rather remarkable. Cagliari lost 7 straight games in all competitions in the last sort of couple of months, and they have been going absolutely nowhere. We saw them in that game against Inter where they scored because of a fantastic goal, but for the rest of it, they could have been, if it hadn't been for Cranial, they could have been about 7 goals down by half time. And I haven't seen them every week, but whenever I look and watch Di Francesco's Cagliari, they are a mess at the back. They don't have much going forward. Nainggolan is on and then he's off. There's just not much logic to the team. Di Francesco doesn't seem to have a clue how to get them to play any differently. And he reacted, Giulini, to their 1-0 defeat at Genoa last week, which dropped them into the bottom 3 by extending Di Francesco's contract, which was an absolutely remarkable decision, given that not only were the results bad, the performances have also been pretty dismal. So, the thinking behind it is that, maybe we'll put the players with their backs against the wall and they'll stop trying to take their foot off the pedal because they know Di Francesco's not going anywhere. And also, obviously, they probably can't afford to sack him, so they were just kind of digging their heels even further. But they've just cost themselves even more money by giving him a new deal. And now today, this is Sunday, obviously, they conceded a last-minute goal to Sassuolo, and that means that they haven't won in the league in 13 games, and they now they can't sack him if things go wrong because they've just extended his contract. So Giulini has just guaranteed themselves basically that he's powerless to stop Cagliari going down now. Because at the moment they're probably one of the favourites given the way they're playing, and their next 2 games are Lazio and Atalanta. So if they're in the bottom 3 already, this is one of the strangest managerial decisions I've made. I mean, he's made a few. I mean, remember he was the one that appointed Zeman when he was already a decade past it a few years ago, and they got relegated. And he's pulled off another remarkable move. So thanks for Barella, Giulini, but I don't really approve of certain decisions you've made. That, in the absence of any sort of bizarre comical moments this week in the world of football, at least I'm aware of, I think that certainly raised my eyebrow.
Oh, for sure. I was laughing when I saw that. My colleague, co-host on the Italian football podcast, John Solano, he tweeted out, "This guy has more lives than a cat," referring to Di Francesco, and it's genuinely remarkable how he's still employed, and people are willing to hire him because the Cagliari squad is pretty decent. He's not a decent coach.
They were in the top 4 at Christmas last season.
No, I mean Maran is a decent coach, and he got them playing some really good football. But I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Do you remember when we drew at Atalanta with that goal from Miranchuk? The start of that was the last time Cagliari won a league game that same day. That was that's how far ago it was.
Horrible, isn't it?
And he's still the coach. I mean,
and they give him a contract extension.
Yeah. So basically, he's tied his hands behind his back.
I mean, I know he's good friends with Massimo Moratti, but not even Moratti would do, of all the crazy stuff he did during his tenure that didn't make any sense. He never did anything this stupid.
No. I mean, even Walter Zenga, who is not the world's greatest coach, he was getting a better tune out of them last season.
Yeah.
Than Di Francesco's. I mean, it's remarkable that since Roma, he's hardly won a game, Di Francesco, wherever he's been. I mean, it's been a collapse completely since he got to that semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the worst thing that happened to him was Kostas Manolas scoring that goal and heading in that ball. I think that's the worst thing that happened to Roma as well. If you ask most Roma fans, they'll say that turned out to be a curse more than anything, because they've not had much to be happy about, as we spoke about last week as the Frog. Right, let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, it's funny. 1 week you're, really slim pickings. You can't find anything to be positive about, and then the next week it's just a bump. So I don't know what to choose. Honestly, I really loved the Kolarov smirk when Ibrahimovic got sent off.
That was fun.
It was, just added to the whole thing, the whole drama of the derby. The derby win in and of itself was fantastic. Lautaro finally scoring a goal is amazing. Barella's performance, there's just so much to choose from. But it's got to be Eriksen's goal, 97th minute winner from a free kick. Just absolute, like we've spoken about it for so long this episode, but there's nothing better than a last-minute winner in a derby, and not only the last-minute winner by an exquisitely taken and executed free kick by an out-of-sorts, quote-unquote star player who's possibly rebuilding his career in black and blue. So just for the goal in and of itself, for the goal in the derby, for the goal to take us into the semi-final, but for possibly realigning Eriksen's fate, career, future in Inter, it's got to be that goal. 97th minute wonder. Grazie, kiss.
You have to agree with that, but also because of the fact that he does seem, I mean, you see on everyone in the team, he seems like he's really popular. They really like him. And Christian Stellini's comments afterwards about how he's worked so hard and he's really committing himself and he doesn't want to leave Inter as a quitter. I think one thing that for me, it's actually Antonio Conte this week. Because I think what Antonio Conte... No, I'll tell you why. And the reason for this is because Antonio Conte, the role he has at Inter now, especially with Suning, the players not having been paid, or now they have been paid for July and August, that creates uncertainty and can create problems. Then you have the issue with Suning maybe selling the club. That creates uncertainty. His role has been to keep this ship together and keep this team together and get everyone to hold their things together and to perform. And he's done that. He has absolutely done his job and then some. And that is really worth commending him for. He's shown that's the leadership qualities you need from your coach to be able to get everyone involved and feel everyone as a part of the team, and to fight for the team when your club is in turmoil.
Absolutely.
Nima has out positivity me and out shown Conte love me. You know?
Listen, I've always been objective about this guy. The things that pisses me off about him have not. Yes, I am. No. I've always been honest about this. The
objectivity hasn't even come down your street when it comes to Conte.
No. Antonio Conte.
The corner.
The things that pissed me off about the Udinese game are still there. The insanity of Kolarov is still there. The Arturo Vidal fetish is still there. All of this craziness is still there. But you have to be honest. You have to be objective. And what he's done, you have to, and you have to be honest. And what he's done at Inter these past 4 weeks, when it's been turbulent. And we know that everything in Inter is accentuated by a million when it's turbulent. He's kept a tight ship. He's not let any of that nonsense get into the dressing room and onto the pitch. In fact, he's changed the narrative around Inter by great performances against Milan and Juventus. So to me, that's definitely worth highlighting and
in January, no less.
Yeah, we've had a good January, haven't we? Or decent.
Yeah, decent January. Yeah, exactly. And that's that's no small feat. I mean, I absolutely think you got to give credit where credit is due, and I think it just proves my point that he's a rich man's Mazzarri, because if you remember when Mazzarri was facing the same, when Moratti was Tohir, Mazzarri was imperative in keeping the calm and keeping the squad focused. So give credit where credit is due. I mean, he's done an excellent job in this aspect.
Yeah. How often do you see that these off pitch issues have an impact on the team? I mean, remember Roma's collapse in January last year. That was when they were selling the club, and it's so you get so many examples of when the things that sort of tangibly they shouldn't affect what's going on, but they always do. These things, and that's why I was quite nervous about the Juventus game, because that's when the BC partner stories were starting to ramp up, and we're hearing about and yet we had our best game of the season. And he said immediately after the Fiorentina game in the cup, I don't want distractions. We mustn't let this distract us from our on-pitch duties. He said on Friday, when he was asked about this Jericho Sanchez thing, I don't want distractions. I'm the first person not to want this. He's really been fighting for his players, and that's good. And just on Eriksen, I've just remembered that. Firstly, I agree. It was a great moment, and there was somebody, Alessandro Rini, who works for one of the publications in Italy. He tweeted after the match on Tuesday that after the match against Milan, there were a few the substitutes did their sort of classic warm down on the pitch at San Siro, and obviously Eriksen was one of them because he came on. And before they left the pitch, Eriksen put the ball in the same spot from which he took the free kick, and he took it again, and he scored again, obviously. And all his teammates celebrated again as if he scored the winner, which I thought was a really nice thing. Unfortunately, there's no footage of it, but I trust him if he said it happened. And I think if you're talking about a moment that can change a season, an image that will stay imprinted in someone's brain, I think that really could be the turning point for him. So, and you could see how much everyone was pleased for him. You always get sort of 5 or 6 replays on a goal, and when I watched that goal, I watched the match again the day after. There was about 4 or 5 different replays, and every time they showed a different replay, I looked at a different player because I wanted to see how every single player had reacted to the fact that Eriksen had scored, and they all seemed chuffed, like they were all really, really pleased for him. So I think that's definitely in his favour. Certainly, it's not his lack of popularity within the dressing room that's been an issue. Conte said, if anything, maybe he's too nice. So,
well, I mean, we've all seen Mourinho and the Amazon documentary say that I don't want you to be C words. I want you to be C words on the pitch, not nice boys. And I think Eriksen is a nice guy. He is genuinely a nice guy, and I think that's why I think this Inter. I mean, you don't have any C words on this team in that sense, do you? I mean, you've got
maybe Kolarov or Vidal could be B words.
Kolarov or Vidal, yeah. But I mean, you don't have, but still, you don't have that mess with Icardi and Wanda and Raja and. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have that energy around this team at all, and it feels really good.
We were doing a story on the site a couple of weeks ago about this logo. You know, I don't know if the listeners saw, but Mauro Icardi has come out with a new logo that's very similar to the one that Inter produced. We're doing this rebrand, which is coming out in a few weeks. And Tuttosport, I think, pointed out that Icardi's new logo, obviously MI is the same initials as Inter Milano, and his entourage were forced to deny the fact that Icardi had copied our logo, and
Wanda said,
and there was a story about Wanda as well. And I was just because I was looking at those stories on the site, and I was just thinking, this used to be daily, every day.
Every day.
You just forget how bad it was.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible, and I'm glad we don't.
Circus.
Yeah, and I'm glad we don't have to deal with that anymore. And on that note, I'd like to thank Alex Donno. I'd like to thank you, Mo.
Hey, always a pleasure, and what a great episode to be on.
Yeah, and Alex had to leave early. He had a thing to go to, but thanks a lot for coming on, Alex, and Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you, everyone. Please stay tuned to our website if you want to know whether Suning are selling the club, keeping the club, flogging the club on eBay, whatever we're told. You'll hear about it on our website, so please.
You most definitely will. You'll hear it first in English, absolutely, on SempreInter.com.
I'm going to that Reddit, the subreddit, what's it called? Wall Street Bets or whatever, no?
Oh, that should have been the frog of the week, actually.
Oh dear,
that would have been a good one. Anyway,
yeah. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to wish you all a good week. Stay healthy, stay safe. Listen to your authorities. I wish you 3 points, a Coppa Italia, a place in the final of the Coppa Italia. I'm your host Nima Ruzzari, wishing you goodbye until next week. Sempre e solo forza.